They said the fire burned too hot for bones to remain. But when the ash cooled, they found something else. Not bones. Footprints. Small. Bare. Leading away from the plantation house and into the slave quarters. In the summer of 1846, in a quiet corner of Carolina, the Whitmore estate went up in flames. The master of the house, Elias Whitmore, was found dead in his study. His wife claimed he had fallen asleep with a candle lit. The local preacher called it God's correction. But the strangest part wasn't the fire. It was the disappearance of their only son. 12-year-old Samuel Whitmore was believed to have perished in the blaze. The town mourned him publicly. His name was carved into a small stone marker beside the family church. Yet months later, whispers began. Some claimed they saw a boy near the fields at dusk, a pale child moving silently among the enslaved workers. Not as a master's son, but as one of them. Records from the county courthouse list Samuel as deceased. But church attendance logs from that same winter include a name written faintly in the margin beside the slave registry. Sam. Not Samuel Whitmore. Just Sam. No last name. No family. As if the boy had stepped out of one world and into another. The town never investigated. The Whitmore estate passed to a distant cousin. Life continued. But inside the slave quarters, something had changed. Someone had changed. And the fire that destroyed the master's house did not burn away the truth. It only buried it. Life in the quarters was brutal, structured, silent. Every person accounted for. Every movement watched. Except for him. The boy arrived one morning without introduction. No announcement. No explanation. He was simply there, standing behind old Mercy, the cook, his hands folded like he was waiting for punishment. He wore coarse linen. No shoes. His blonde hair had been cut short. Too short. Mercy later told her daughter that the boy did not speak for the first week. Not to the overseer. Not to the others. He just worked. Carried water. Gathered scraps. Slept on the dirt floor. But he did not know how to move like them. His hands were soft. His posture too straight. He flinched at commands not from fear, but from confusion. One night, an older man named Isaiah noticed something strange. When the boy thought no one was looking, he whispered words in Latin. Latin. Prayers learned from the plantation's private tutor. The enslaved people noticed. They always noticed. They began calling him Little Ghost. Because he moved like he didn't belong in his own skin. Because he never spoke of where he came from. Because sometimes, in his sleep, he would cry out, "Father, I didn't mean to." No one dared ask what he meant. But Mercy knew, and she kept him close. Because buried under the dirt and fear, under the silence and smoke. This was not a runaway. This was not stolen property. This was the master's son. And he was hiding. The Whitmore family funded the only church within 20 miles. White wood. Tall steeple. A bell that rang like judgment. After the fire, sermons changed. Reverend Caleb Moore began speaking about impure blood and divine correction. His voice trembled as if he feared something unseen in the pews. Because he knew. Reverend Moore had been Samuel's tutor. He had taught the boy scripture. Latin. Discipline. He also knew that Elias Whitmore was not a gentle man. Behind closed doors, the master had ruled with something worse than cruelty. Obsession. Whitmore believed suffering purified the soul. He believed pain revealed truth. And he believed his son was weak. Parish journals recovered decades later contain a strange entry from the Reverend. Elias tests the boy again tonight. The child's eyes no longer reflect innocence. I fear what is being made in that house. After the fire, Reverend Moore visited the slave quarters under the excuse of prayer. He saw the boy. Samuel saw him too. Their eyes met only once. And in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition. Terror. The Reverend never reported it. Instead, he increased sermons about obedience. About silence. About divine order. As if he were trying to hold something together. Or keep something buried. The church bell rang every Sunday. But fewer enslaved people attended. They said the building felt wrong. As if it carried smoke inside its walls. As if something unclean had survived the fire. Winter came early that year. Cold settled into the fields like a warning. Samuel, now simply Sam, had begun to change. He no longer cried in his sleep. He no longer whispered Latin prayers. Instead, he listened. He watched. He asked questions about freedom. Not in the hopeful way children do, but in a measured way. Calculating. One evening, Mercy found him sitting alone behind the quarters, staring at the ruins of the old plantation house. The chimney still stood, blackened, like a finger pointing upward. "Did you light it?" she asked softly. He didn't answer at first. Then he said something that made her blood run cold. He said it was for my soul. His voice did not shake. He said fire reveals truth. Mercy understood then. The master had not fallen asleep. The fire had not been accident. Samuel had locked the study door from the outside. He had left his father inside. A boy raised in cruelty had chosen flame over submission. But something else lingered in his words. Not relief, not guilt, understanding. He had learned his father's lesson. He had learned what power felt like, and he had survived it. Mercy realized the plantation had not lost a master. It had raised a new one, just smaller, hidden, waiting. That winter, livestock began dying without explanation. Tools vanished. Locks broke. And in the dead of night, the church bell rang once. Though no one stood beneath it, the town blamed vandals. They blamed unrest. They never blamed the boy they had already buried. But the fire had not cleansed the Whitmore bloodline. It had set it free. By spring, the quarters no longer felt the same. Nothing visible had changed. The same fields, the same overseer, the same cracked well beside the cabins. But something beneath the surface had shifted, and it centered around the boy. Sam had learned quickly, too quickly. He listened to arguments before they happened. He predicted punishments before they were announced. He told Isaiah once, quietly, not to hide food under the loose plank near the stove. The next morning, the overseer searched that exact spot. Isaiah was beaten anyway. Sam did not flinch. That was when fear replaced curiosity. He had begun speaking in careful suggestions. Small instructions. Don't go to the north fence tonight. Stay inside after dusk. Trust no one who smiles too much. And he was always right. It was as if he understood the plantation's structure from the inside out. As if he had memorized its veins when he was still sleeping in silk sheets. Mercy watched him closely. She saw how he observed people when they were vulnerable. She saw how he studied the overseer's drinking habits. She saw how he mapped the routine of patrol horses in the dirt with a stick. He was no longer hiding. He was reorganizing. The Whitmore cousin who inherited the estate rarely visited. The property ran itself through fear and routine. And Sam knew routine better than anyone. He had been raised inside it. But what frightened Mercy most was not his intelligence. It was the calm. There was no rage in him. No childish recklessness. Just patience. And children who learn patience too early are rarely innocent. By early summer, 3 families had quietly disappeared. Runaways, the overseer claimed. But no dogs were sent. No posters printed. No pursuit organized. It was as if someone had ensured the timing was perfect. And each disappearance followed a conversation with Sam. The quarters began whispering a new name. Not Little Ghost, but the Quiet One. Because when he walked, the air seemed to lean toward him. Listening, the church bell rang again. 3 times. At midnight. No storm. No service. No death announced. The townspeople woke uneasy. Windows cracked open. Candles lit. No one stepped outside. By morning, the Reverend stood pale beneath the steeple. He swore he had locked the doors. But the rope was frayed. As if someone had pulled it slowly. Carefully. Not in panic. But in ritual. Inside the church, something else had changed. The Whitmore family pew had been carved into. A single word scratched deep into the wood. Witness. Reverend Moore recognized the handwriting. He had seen it on Samuel's practice pages years before. The tight angles. The careful pressure. He said nothing publicly. But that evening, he rode alone toward the quarters. He found Sam near the well. The boy stood taller now. Thinner. Sharper in the face. You survived, the Reverend said quietly. Sam did not deny it. You should not have, Moore whispered. For a moment, something flickered in the boy's eyes. Not anger. Not fear. But disappointment. He said God wanted truth, Sam replied. Fire gives truth. The Reverend stepped back. You don't understand what you've done. Sam tilted his head slightly. No, he said. I understand perfectly. The bell rang again that night. Only once. The next morning, Reverend Moore left town without explanation. He never returned. Official records claim illness. But no grave bears his name. And without the Reverend, the church became quieter. The sermons softer. The doctrine less certain. Authority had lost its voice. And in its silence, something else began speaking. Sam began teaching. Not openly. Not like a preacher. But in fragments. He explained which guards could be bribed. Which locks rusted faster in humidity. which crops fetched higher prices in town and therefore required less supervision. He knew numbers. He knew trade. He knew leverage. And slowly, something unthinkable happened. The quarters became organized. Not rebellious. Organized. Food was distributed evenly. Watch schedules created quietly. Signals established using lantern light reflected in tin pans. The overseer noticed improved productivity and assumed fear was working. He never noticed that fear had changed direction, because fear now flowed toward one small figure who never raised his voice. There were moments when Sam would stare at the horizon for long periods. Mercy once asked what he saw. Patterns, he answered. He began writing again, using scraps of paper stolen from the main house ruins. Symbols, names, maps, not escape plans, infrastructure. He was not planning to run. He was studying control. And those who suffer under control understand its architecture better than those who benefit from it. But one evening, Isaiah confronted him. "You're not one of us," he said plainly. Sam did not argue. Isaiah continued, "You speak like them. Think like them." Silence stretched. Then Sam answered softly, "I learned from the best." That was the moment Isaiah understood. The boy had not rejected his father's teachings. He had absorbed them, reversed them, refined them. The plantation was no longer decaying. It was transforming. And transformation is rarely gentle. Summer ended with another fire. Not the main house. The storage barn. It burned low and controlled. Almost surgical. Inside were account books, debt records, birth ledgers, proof of ownership. Gone. The cousin who owned the estate arrived in fury. He demanded answers. The overseer blamed sabotage, but the damage was too precise. Only certain documents destroyed. Others left untouched. The ones erased? They listed ages, parentage, bloodlines. The same information Elias Whitmore had obsessively tracked. After the barn fire, something even stranger occurred. For more people vanished. Not families this time. Specific individuals. All known informants. All known to report minor infractions. Gone without struggle. No bodies found. No tracks. No sound. The plantation felt thinner, as if hollowed from within. Sam said nothing. He simply continued working, watching. One night, Mercy followed him. She saw him standing near the chimney ruins again. He pressed his hand against the blackened brick and whispered something she could not hear. But when he turned back toward the quarters, his expression was no longer that of a child. It was something colder, resolved. In the weeks that followed, surrounding plantations began reporting unrest. Not riots. Structure shifts. Refusal patterns. Strategic silence. As if an invisible hand was teaching others. The Whitmore estate was no longer just land. It had become a seed, and the boy everyone believed had died in fire was quietly rewriting the rules of survival. But survival was not his final goal. Not anymore. Because in learning his father's lessons, he had discovered something far more dangerous than cruelty. He had discovered belief. By autumn, the Whitmore estate no longer behaved like a plantation. It behaved like something waiting. Work continued. Cotton was harvested. Wagons moved in and out. But beneath that surface rhythm, another system operated. Invisible. Precise. Sam had stopped giving advice. Now he gave silence. And people acted anyway. Lantern signals spread beyond the Whitmore land. Tin reflections answered from neighboring fields. Workers began exchanging coded hymns during forced church gatherings. Lyrics shifted slightly. Words meant one thing to white ears, another to everyone else. Sam did not invent the suffering. He reorganized it. The cousin owner tried to restore order. He increased patrols, hired extra men, enforced harsher discipline. But punishments landed on the wrong people. Always the wrong ones. Informants disappeared first, then those known for cruelty. The overseer began sleeping with a pistol beside his bed. It didn't help. One morning, he was found wandering the yard barefoot, claiming someone had been standing at the foot of his bed all night. Watching, he described the figure as small, still, unblinking. By winter, 3 nearby plantations reported similar disturbances. Not rebellion, something colder. Tools placed deliberately in wrong locations. Horses untied, locks jammed with mud. No shouting, no revolt, just steady erosion. And at the center of it all, a boy who rarely spoke. Mercy noticed something else. Sam no longer flinched at screams. He listened to them the way his father once had. Studying tone, studying breaking points. He had learned something terrible inside that burning house. Power did not require noise. It required structure. And the soil beneath Carolina was being rewritten. Quietly. In December, a stranger arrived. A preacher. Not Reverend Moore. This man was younger. Sharper. He carried letters of authority from the county and wore certainty like armor. His name was Reverend Thomas Hale. He had heard rumors. Not of rebellion, but of unnatural influence. He began visiting the quarters unannounced, conducting prayer circles, asking direct questions. Who speaks for you? Who organizes you? Who rings the bell? Silence answered him. But when he locked eyes with Sam, something unsettled him. The boy did not look away. Most children did. This one did not. During Sunday's sermon, Hale spoke about hidden serpents, about wolves in sheep's clothing, about the danger of corrupted leadership rising from within. He quoted scripture about false prophets. Sam sat in the back, motionless. After service, Hale followed him. You were educated, the preacher said quietly. Sam shrugged. Education is dangerous in the wrong hands. Sam smiled faintly. Whose hands are right? That was the first time anyone saw the preacher hesitate. That night, Hale searched the ruins of the Whitmore house. He found something in the chimney ash. A small brass button. From a child's coat. But the coat had never been found. The body had never been found. Hale began writing letters to the county about infiltration, about moral decay. But the letters never reached town. The post rider claimed they were lost. 2 weeks later, Reverend Hale disappeared during a routine visit to the outer fields. His horse returned alone. No blood. No struggle. Just absence. And the bell rang once. Mercy had protected him at first. Fed him. Covered for him. But she began to see what others did not. Sam was no longer protecting anyone. He was shaping them. People deferred to him without realizing it. Arguments ended when he entered a room. Plans formed around his silence. He did not command. He allowed conclusions, which felt like freedom, but weren't. One evening she confronted him near the well. Why are you doing this? She asked. He looked at her as if the question were naive. They believed in order, he said. They believed suffering purified. His voice carried no emotion. I am giving them order. Mercy felt something fracture inside her. This isn't freedom, she whispered. Sam tilted his head. Freedom is unstable, he replied. Structure survives. That night, Mercy dreamed of the fire. But in her dream, the flames did not consume the house. They reshaped it, turned it into something taller, stronger, made of shadow. She woke with a realization she did not want. Elias Whitmore had believed pain revealed truth. His son believed control prevented pain. Different language. Same foundation. By spring, whispers spread beyond the plantation. Runaways from other estates arrived at Whitmore land. Not to flee north, but to stay, to join something forming. No one called it rebellion. They called it safety. And safety can be more powerful than hope. Mercy understood then. The boy had not survived the fire. He had been forged in it. In 1848, the county finally intervened. Too many plantations reported structural disruptions. Too many clergy had disappeared. A small group of officials arrived at Whitmore Estate. They questioned the cousin owner, inspected records, counted heads. Everything appeared normal, almost improved. Production steady, violence minimal, no signs of uprising. But when they conducted private interviews with workers, responses were identical. Measured, careful, no complaints, no accusations, no fear. That frightened them more than chaos would have. One official asked a young man who made decisions on the estate. The answer came calmly. We do. The official pressed further. How? Silence. Then, together. The word lingered strangely. That night, the officials stayed in the main house ruins, now partially rebuilt. Around midnight, footsteps circled the structure. Soft. Bare. No one seen. The youngest official swore he saw a child standing near the old chimney, watching. In the morning, the county group left abruptly. Their final report described the Whitmore estate as peculiarly stable. No further action recommended. After they left, the bell rang. Twice. By 1850, neighboring plantations began quietly adopting similar internal organization patterns. Less visible punishment. More internal coordination. Something had spread. Not fire. Not revolt. A method. And at its center, still small, still pale, still silent, was the master's son. The one who learned that to survive horror, you must become the architect of it. By 1852, no one called him a boy anymore. He was taller now, 17, lean, controlled. His voice had deepened, but he rarely used it. The Whitmore estate no longer felt like a broken plantation. It felt disciplined. Punishments had nearly disappeared. Productivity remained high. Outsiders described the place as remarkably orderly. But the order did not belong to the owner. It belonged to something else. Sam no longer worked the fields. No one questioned it. He moved between cabins quietly, speaking in brief exchanges. He studied trade routes, learned prices in nearby towns, memorized which counties were tightening patrol laws. He understood the world beyond the fence, and he adjusted accordingly. Escapes were no longer random. They were scheduled. Not everyone left. Only those most vulnerable. Only those most likely to fracture the structure. The plantation became selective. That was the true horror. It did not fight the system. It optimized survival inside it. Mercy watched him from a distance now. She no longer approached him as a child. She saw the way people leaned toward him unconsciously, how conflicts dissolved before they grew. He was calm because he believed he was right. And belief makes conviction dangerous. One evening, she heard him speaking to a small group. "You cannot destroy the cage," he said quietly, "but you can learn its shape." Someone asked him if he hated his father. Sam paused. "No," he replied. "I improved him." That was when Mercy understood. This was not rebellion. It was inheritance. What began at Whitmore spread outward. Slowly, plantations across parts of Carolina reported similar changes. Less visible violence. Fewer public punishments. Stronger internal cooperation among the enslaved. Owners assumed fear had finally done its work. They were wrong. Travelers carried more than goods between estates. They carried patterns, signal codes, methods of coordination disguised as obedience, hymns with altered rhythms, hand movements during prayer, eye contact that meant timing. No one used Sam's name, but his influence traveled. The cousin owner at Whitmore Estate rarely visited anymore. Profits were stable, complaints minimal. From a distance, everything looked peaceful. But inside, an alternative hierarchy existed. Not declared, not formal, but absolute. Sam's greatest weapon was predictability. He understood that cruelty is chaotic. Control is quiet. By 1854, he had begun recording detailed ledgers of supply distribution, skill sets among workers, literacy levels, physical health. He was building knowledge. Because knowledge outlasts violence. Mercy found one of his hidden notebooks beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were sketches, not escape routes, organizational diagrams, circles within circles. At the center of each, a small mark. No name, just a point. She realized something terrifying. He was not preparing to escape the plantation. He was preparing to survive any future system, whatever shape it took. In 1855, drought struck the region. Crops failed across several estates. Panic rose among owners. Punishments increased elsewhere. Whitmore did not collapse. Food had already been rationed carefully months before. Water reserves protected. Labor adjusted to reduce strain. Sam had anticipated it. How? Mercy demanded one evening. He simply said, "Patterns repeat." But drought brought something worse. Desperation. A neighboring plantation erupted in violence. Several enslaved workers were publicly executed as warning. Rumors spread fast. Fear seeped toward Whitmore. People whispered about rising up, about striking first. Sam gathered a small group in secret. "This is not the moment," he said calmly. "Chaos will destroy everything we've built." A young man challenged him. "So we just endure?" Sam looked at him steadily. "Endurance is power." The argument ended there. No vote, no shouting, just acceptance. Mercy felt cold watching it. He had replaced open brutality with disciplined patience, which was more sustainable, and perhaps more frightening, because his control did not rely on chains. It relied on trust and fear of losing stability. By winter, other plantations collapsed into disorder. Whitmore remained intact. Word spread quietly. If you want safety, go there. But safety had a price, and that price was obedience to a structure no one fully understood, except him. By 1856, Mercy could no longer ignore what she felt. The plantation was safer. Yes, fewer whippings, fewer disappearances, more coordinated protection. But something inside the community had shifted. Spontaneity was gone. Laughter was rarer. Every decision felt measured. Every action aligned. They were surviving, But they were not living. One night, Mercy approached Sam near the old chimney ruins. "You've built something strong," she said. He nodded once. "But strength can become a cage, too." He studied her quietly. "You fear me," he said. She didn't deny it. "I fear what you're becoming." For the first time in years, his expression flickered. Not anger, not arrogance. Fatigue. "I remember what chaos felt like," he said softly. She stepped closer. "And I remember what hope felt like." Silence stretched between them. Wind moved through the broken brick of the chimney. "You could leave," she whispered. "Take this knowledge north. Use it differently." He looked toward the fields, toward the cabins, toward the structure he had built. "If I leave," he said, "it collapses." Mercy realized then the final truth. He did not see himself as a master. He saw himself as necessary. And necessity justifies anything. A week later, Mercy disappeared. No struggle, no trace. Some said she ran north. Others whispered Sam had arranged it. The bell did not ring, and that was more unsettling than if it had. In 1861, war arrived. Not as rumor, not as distant politics, as sound, cannons in the distance, columns of smoke beyond tree lines. Young white men marching away from plantations that had depended on their presence for generations. The Civil War did not begin at Whitmore Estate, but it reached it quickly. The cousin owner fled within the first year, fearing raids. Overseers left to join Confederate regiments. Patrol structures weakened. For the first time in decades, there was no official authority, only what remained. Sam was 27, old enough now that no one questioned his presence. When Union troops passed near the region, some plantations erupted. Some burned. Some were abandoned entirely. Whitmore did not. There were no riots, no looting, no collapse. The internal structure absorbed the shock. Food had already been rationed. Labor reallocated. Watch rotations adjusted. Sam gathered everyone in the yard one evening. "The war is noise," he said calmly. "What survives is order." Some wanted to leave immediately, to follow Union lines north. He did not stop them, but he did not encourage it either. "Choose stability," he told them. Many stayed, because stability, after years of fear, feels like safety. By 1865, emancipation arrived officially. Freedom was declared in ink. But Whitmore Estate had already been operating outside traditional plantation control for years. The system did not collapse. It transitioned. And at its center, still calm, still quiet, still deliberate, was Samuel Whitmore, the master's son, no longer hiding, but no longer visible either. After the war, chaos swallowed much of the South. Freedmen searched for family. Towns reorganized. Militias formed. Violence surged unpredictably. Whitmore Land did something different. It became a cooperative settlement. No official title, no legal charter, just shared land use, shared labor, shared protection. Formerly enslaved families built small homes where cabins once stood. Trade agreements were formed with nearby towns. And Sam, he never claimed leadership, but decisions still flowed through him. People sought his counsel instinctively. He helped draft agreements. He calculated supply needs. He mediated disputes before they escalated. He refused payment, refused title, refused public recognition. That made him harder to challenge. He had no official power, which meant he could not be officially removed. In 1872, a journalist traveling through Carolina wrote briefly about an unusually organized freed settlement operating with uncommon discipline. No names mentioned, no details given. The article was small, buried in a regional paper, but those who knew Whitmore recognized it. Sam had built something that outlasted slavery itself. Not rebellion, not revolution, infrastructure. Yet something unsettling lingered. Children born after emancipation grew up under the same quiet system, same predictability, same discipline. They never knew the fire, but they inherited its structure, and structures shape minds, just as surely as chains once did. By the 1880s, Samuel Whitmore was rarely seen in public. Age had sharpened him further. His hair streaked with gray, his face unreadable. He had never married, never fathered children, but his influence had already replicated. Through habits, through expectations, through belief. One winter evening, he walked toward the old chimney ruins, the only piece of the original plantation house still standing. Witness to everything. He did not return. Search parties combed the woods. No body, no blood, no note. Only his notebooks remained, hidden beneath floorboards. Inside them were decades of observations, patterns of human behavior, cycles of authority, notes on fear, notes on loyalty. One final entry stood alone on the last page. Power survives by becoming invisible. The chimney collapsed during a storm weeks later. The last physical remnant of Elias Whitmore's house vanished, and with it, the last visible link to the fire. Some claimed Sam left north quietly. Others believed he walked into the woods and never intended to return. But the more unsettling theory was this. He did not need to exist anymore, because what he built no longer required him. Today, no official record acknowledges Samuel Whitmore's survival. County documents list him as deceased in 1846. The church cemetery still carries his name on a small weathered stone. Visitors pass it without pause. The Whitmore estate no longer exists under that name. The land changed ownership many times. But oral histories in that region speak carefully of a quiet founder, a man who believed survival required structure, who replaced visible cruelty with invisible control. Historians searching plantation archives find anomalies, gaps in punishment records, unusually stable production numbers during years of regional unrest, mentions of cooperative farming decades before it became common. No direct explanation, just patterns. And patterns tell stories official history avoids. The horror of Whitmore was never the fire. It was not the father, not even the violence. It was the transformation. A child shaped by cruelty who learned its architecture so well that he could refine it, improve it, and make it sustainable. The master's son did not free himself by rejecting power. He freed himself by mastering it. And perhaps that is the most disturbing truth buried in Carolina soil. Because institutions do not disappear when they burn. They adapt. They hide. They become necessary. And somewhere in the quiet spaces of history, between official records and forgotten memory, the bell still echoes. Not as warning, not as rebellion, but as reminder that survival, when built on control, can feel like safety, even when it is something else entirely.